Hello and welcome. My name is Carsten Lützen. I'm an Agile coach, facilitator and whatnot. Today I'll talk about critical thinking, which is one of these underlying skills that a lot of us maybe take for granted, but we sometimes need to revisit and try to hone our critical thinking skills. So critical thinking is an old concept from ancient Greece, but it's still very much relevant. And one of the definitions is that critical thinking is the ability to objectively analyze and evaluate an issue in order to form a judgment. And when we are trying to work agile or iteratively or whatever we call it, right, this is very much at the heart of a lot of it, right? We need to be able to objectively figure out what is the right thing for us to do, either as a team or as an individual, analyze it, evaluate it, and then figure out what is a good next step for us. So some of the skills that we often talk about in critical thinking is this analysis. So being able to take in data, take in the world, the environment, and then figure out what is it that we're seeing and trying to interpret it. And of course, analysis also requires us being able to observe what is going on, either through our eyes or through metrics. So some people also include observation as a skill. Inference, so with this skill, with this data that we have, right? What conclusion can we use or can we create from this data that we have analyzed? And communication, how can we communicate this to the rest of the team, to our stakeholders, to the rest of the organization? Why is it that we're doing as we're doing? How is it that we're doing it? And this problem solving, so tying it all together so we can gather different problems, we can try to analyze it use inference to create or make decisions, right? And all in all, use these skills. And as I said in the beginning, right, critical thinking plays a super important role in Agile. We often do this iterative decision making, and for that we should use critical thinking. A lot of us is using it, but maybe not putting the label critical thinking on it, but it helps us to go through and use these steps, right? The same with communication. In Agile, we need to have good, stable communication in our team. And if we apply the critical thinking way of working, right, of looking at problems, we have the communication here. We practice. How is it that we communicate? What is it that we have observed? How did we analyze it? How are we going to change something about it to solve these problems? And the same with just problem solving in general in sprints. At least in the teams I'm part of, there is a high degree of uncertainty. When we go into a sprint, we have an idea of this is the sprint goal, this is where we want to end, but getting there, that's not a known to us yet. So we need to apply critical thinking in these sprints, right, to help us problem solve. So look at the data, analyze the data, and make informed decisions on these data, right, and then adapt based on this. So as we can see, there's a big overlap with Agile. So how can we then do it more deliberately on a day-to-day basis? For instance, just when we ask questions, be curious, right? Really train. How do we ask questions? How do we ask open-ended, non-judgmental questions? To just observe and get data from the world, because our perception is probably not the only perception of what is happening. And we can train this critical thinking in retros. And we also see it, for instance, in the Derby-Larsen model when we do retrospectives. So what is it that we saw in the last sprint? How can we gather that data? How can we quantify this data? How can we make decisions, and how can we make next steps, right? And these diverse views in the team, the more diverse views we have in the team, the more data do we have to analyze, the more ideas do we have to work with, which is really alpha and omega in these situations, right? And then the dailies, for instance, if we meet up every day to talk about what is it that we're going to do today that will hopefully bring us closer to the sprint goal, analyze what has happened, what needs to happen today for us to actually get closer to this, and then make good, informed decisions. It's a bit like also with the scientific method, right? We need to sometimes go back to these really fundamental things and revisit them to really hone our skills and make sure that we don't forget them and that we don't go off in a completely wrong direction, right? And to me, critical thinking and the critical thinking skills is something that I try to be quite aware of when I facilitate teams. I'm hoping that some of you will share your awesome ways of explaining critical thinking as well. That would be cool. It's always nice to hear from you. And if you have comments, questions, or ideas to these videos, please let me know. That would be cool. And that's it. Have a super awesome day.